Hi there, and welcome to episode 181 of Pop Culturally Deprived, where each week we watch a movie I've never seen before, which is most of them, and talk about the good, the bad, and the flesh-stretching. This week we're going to be talking about Star Trek Insurrection on your Saddle Up, Lock and Load podcast. That's what he said. Why are you giving me that look?
Dear podcast listeners, obviously this is an audio thing, so just to bring you up to speed, I can't roll my eyes hard enough at that line. I mean,
there are a lot of lines that are pretty cringy in this one.
He doesn't even need a line like that. It would have been much better to have a sort of straight moment of him sort of explaining the whole situation. It's kind of funny how seriously he's taking it. But no, they give him the line, saddle up, which would work on its own, and they give him the line, lock and load, which would work on its own. But he says them both in sequence, and it makes no sense. Why would you say saddle up, lock and load? It just doesn't work. It's too much. It's too silly. Why is Brent Spiner so high on the credit list for this film?
Why don't you tell us how you really feel about this movie, Matthew?
It's such a weird dichotomy to this film. This is the one that breaks all the rules. Okay.
So when you say it breaks all the rules, like what rules does it break?
So the good one, bad one, good one, bad one. This is where it starts completely falling down, because technically this is supposed to be a bad one. And the first half of this is really good. It's really solid. This is almost as good as, if not as good as, some of the good stuff they do in the Kelvin timeline stuff. Mm-hmm. And not too dissimilar from it. So awesome. And then the second half, it just falls apart. And I'm hoping over the next however long this podcast is, I don't know why. It falls into every trap of 1998 movies and doesn't work.
Yeah, I think the basis for this movie was fantastic. The storyline, like the just baseline plot of the movie is fantastic. And that is like super Star Trek. And because we've also been... And maybe I'm confusing because I, watched Discovery recently, and there's like lots of Star Trek going on now. But there's been a lot recently that I've seen kind of in the Star Trek world that's been Picard or someone like that standing for the ideals of the Federation, having to stand against the Federation because the Federation is moving away from that. And we get that in full force here.
Yes.
Which I think is lovely because, Picard is the one to do that, right? Like, that's the driving force behind the whole show, Picard, is that he did that. Therefore, he's no longer, spoiler alert, in Starfleet because he stood up for his ideals. So, yeah, it's fantastic. But they tried too hard to check the boxes. They tried way too hard to make it funny. Like, to the point where instead of quippy one-liners, we get just silliness.
Yeah.
Like, saddle up, lock and load. The whole thing about the zit on Worf's face. We didn't need that.
We didn't need it, but I can stand... Okay, we're going way, into the thing. What are your thoughts on it? What is your feeling? Because I'm well geared up because I've been thinking about this film for years now.
20 years?
A long damn time.
So, I liked it, but I'm always going to like something that takes place in this world, particularly when it's got my captain.
Okay,
right?
yeah,
and Picard is my captain. Mm-hmm. I did find parts of it odd. Like, I didn't understand Deanna and Riker being so touchy-feely throughout the whole thing. Like, I knew they were starting to, be flirty with each other again, but they weren't, an item yet at the end of the last one, were they?
Nope, not at all.
And so, we come into this one, and they just kind of are. Mm-hmm. But you can tell that it's new because she had never kissed him with a beard, and he's had a beard for a really long time, right? Yeah. Things like that. And then they reveal at the end that they were having these feelings because of the effects of the planet. Like, it was amplifying what they had. And I feel like if that had been explained earlier on, it would have made more sense and wouldn't have felt like it was just out of left field.
Okay.
Because I was like, what? Like, I love it, but why?
Right, okay, yeah.
So little things like that could have been done better. And again, with the humor, some of it was just too much. But the overall story that they were trying to tell with the Baku and the Federation and the Sona, I really enjoyed.
It's really good, solid. You saying about the stuff from Picard and him defending the principles of the Federation against what the Federation Starfleet are actually doing. I mean, that's a good chunk of the Next Gen as well. This is not a new Star Trek story, and particularly not for this crew. So that's fine. I have a big problem with this film because, and you touching on the humour is a right thing, like a really good point. And I thought it might be the introduction of new aliens. I think the thing with I'm going to say the Sona, the evil aliens. Yeah, okay. Been thinking about it a long time. No idea what anyone's name is. So.
I know one character's name, Donna Murphy's character.
Okay.
Adij.
But no, so the Sona, I thought it was them. I thought and part of that is the execution of them. That they're having these treatments done to them to keep them looking younger and younger. It's, the sort of thing you write when you live in Los Angeles for a long time, I suspect.
Moisturize me, moisturize. Oh, that reference goes right over your head, doesn't it?
What's that from?
Oh my gosh. It's a Doctor Who reference.
Okay. That's the skin thing, isn't it?
The skin, she has had so many procedures done, she's no longer a person. She's a flap of skin with a face.
Okay.
Which is essentially what the Sona are trying to do. But
they don't look young and beautiful. I mean, we know what people who have lots of cosmetic surgery look like. Okay, and we know how that starts tending towards a very specific look, which, and fine, they're not necessarily going in that direction with that specific look, but they don't look young through flesh stretching. They look alien and weird.
Right.
And I feel like that's a giant misstep of, like, these beautiful people, but it turns out it's constant surgeries, and the surgeries are causing these toxins and so on and so forth.
I can't think of another way, though, that they could have done it and still had the twist that they were actually Baku, who left and still continued to seek that continuous revitalization, right? Like, I like that twist. I think it's wonderful, but you're right, it doesn't necessarily make sense the way it was executed.
My question was going to be, do you like the twist? And actually, thinking about it, yes, I do. Yeah, it's quite good. When it comes, it's kind of like, oh, okay, we can sort of see where this plot is coming from. So we come to the next big problem with it, which is it's called Star Trek Insurrection. There is a civil war in Starfleet, and people are up in arms against each other. No, there's these couple of people for about 6 hours. It's not like one side of the Enterprise, the bridge section is fighting the engineering section and over their principles, this sort of thing. What they did with Civil War. The idea that, 50% of people do actually think Iron Man's right, and 50% of people think Captain America's right. That's not what they're doing here. They're just trying to set up, like, Picard is going against the Federation and Starfleet. Well, he's done that before. And he will do it again.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's a bad title, for sure.
It's very strange to sort of theme your film around, this is going to be our big kind of plot point, and it takes ages to get there, and it kind of doesn't mean anything. It's just them fighting for them in the end. It becomes sort of Firefly-esque. The thing it reminded me most of, actually, watching this, was a Star Wars prequel. It really has, and obviously it's from the time it was made and so on. It has a lot of the same sort of action beats. It's sort of fantastical. And it's, these people go off and explore this thing, and these people go off and explore this thing. It's got that sort of Obi-Wan's over here, and Anakin's over here, and...
Right.
Because the exploring the situation, trying to figure out what's happened, again, the first half of the film, is good. Working the problem and trying to figure out the plot here, it's good.
It is good. I didn't like Picard. I mean, Picard immediately makes the leap to, they're going to relocate all these people. When they find the hollow ship. And I feel like there needed to be a few more steps before he could get there.
Okay.
That didn't super work.
Okay.
I mean, but he's Picard, so maybe it's okay, but
and we do
it
then,
just felt
they
weird.
explain it a bit later, so...
Yeah.
And that's the problem with Star Trek, DS9 particularly. you can see the plot of the episode really early on, usually. You can be like, oh, okay, so he's evil, and he's swindling them, and he's doing this, blah, blah, blah. And then you're just watching these characters figure it out, and it takes a few seasons before, like, they stop writing that thing.
Right.
So it's quite nice to have a Star Trek. I think this might be why I appreciate, like, a Star Trek where they're actually clever people doing a thing.
I did find it interesting that they found a way to have Worf back. I mean, because clearly at this point, Worf is on DS9.
Well,
right. Which it made sense in the last movie to have Worf come back because he was with the Defiant when they came to fight the Borg. Like, there was no reason for him to be here for this. But he's Worf. He has to be because it's a TNG movie.
Yeah. In the timeline, this is either during season 7 or just after the Dominion War. Because the Dominion War is even referenced.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think the Dominion War is still going on based on the way they talked.
So it makes absolutely no sense to have him there. And he's not necessary to it.
Not at all.
However, the stuff with Will and Deanna, the stuff with his pimple, the stuff with Geordie's eyes, and even the moments of Picard dancing and him being able to hear the thing. So there's the moment early on where Beverly even says, oh, the captain used to cut quite a rug. And then we see him dancing a bit later. It's like it's setting up this nice thing that are moments of humour that become plot points. Mm-hmm. Proof of what's actually going on. I really like it. I actually think it's a very nice way to integrate it. Like all this sort of funny stuff that's going on. Like, oh, it all means something. Oh, clever.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But then you get halfway through, you get a bit of speechifying at the Admiral, who was the counsellor from the Matrix films, who did the whole thing about, I've been asleep half my life, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly it becomes generic sort of action, doesn't mean a thing film.
Yeah. I think the oddest like action movie shot they had was when they showed they're fighting the drones, like 5 drones show up and they show the 5 that are stopped just hovering there.
Yep.
And they take the time to individually show each of the 5 people and then they shoot them.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is not that kind of movie. But it was, apparently.
Robot drones do not wait for you to saddle up, lock and load before you shoot them.
Right, exactly.
And particularly because the way he's done it, he's sort of got the camera back and he's zoomed in to get this sort of panning shot of their faces. Except the panning shot of their faces has to go up to Michael Dorn and Brent Spiner, down to Marina Sirtis, and back up to Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
Someone get her a box.
Although I did like Worf using the gun as a bat because he ran out of jammed or he ran out of ammo. I didn't think you could run out of ammo in like laser phaser things, but
who knows?
You know, he got to use it as a bat to knock the drone out of the sky.
And then Picard and Adij get shot anyway. Cool. So what was this all for? What did we fight for?
Action, man.
Yeah. It just like, well, if you wanted them up there, just have it that it comes in and captures them.
Yeah.
Don't waste my time with this. And then you have Captain Picard in a vest crawling around a thing being an action hero at the end.
Yeah.
I do not need Patrick Stewart as an action hero 3 films in a row. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, we also didn't need the cave-in. Like, they set that up early on because they focused on that stupid little puppet animal.
Yep.
So many times and then I was like, why do they keep doing close-up shots of this thing? And then as soon as I realized what happened, I was like, oh, the kid's gonna go back for it. They're gonna have to go back for him. But there were no stakes, right? Like, she was a little bit hurt, but they got to her in time. They fixed her, and then they still got captured. Like, so why did we need that moment of essentially false conflict?
We have the thing of him slowing time down, making the moment last forever so they can come and get them. But again, that's magic. That's not the Star Trek universe. So, this is what makes it feel like a Star Wars prequel, because that's a Force sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Definitely not something we're accustomed to seeing.
No.
And then they didn't actually really explain it either. We're just left to say, oh, it's this mystical stuff that happens because of
the
radiation?
Rings? Yeah. Yeah, Adijah's ring helps everyone do impressive stuff.
Yeah.
Who knows? So it's kind of frustrating. And like I say, it breaks rules that it has this sort of heavily ground-based, we're trudging all these people. Look, you know, it now looks like a Lord of the Rings film. Like all the stuff in the Two Towers with the Rohirrim. People of Rohan. And the weird ending that doesn't... Yeah, they blow up the ship. Well, they always blow up the ship.
I mean, they did defeat the bad guys, and the Baku got to keep their planet. Mm-hmm. But there's no guarantee that the Federation isn't still going to try and harness this power.
Absolutely.
Because we didn't actually get a resolution on that. We still see it from, as far as we know, from what the Admiral said, the Federation was 100% behind this operation.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And Picard is against it, and so he stops it. And eventually, it does look like the Admiral realizes we're in too deep, we can't keep doing this, but it wasn't because of the morals of the thing. It was because of the inconvenience and the resources it was taking.
Yeah.
He never realized, what they're doing is wrong. And then the Admiral dies, and we never actually go back to Starfleet and find out if the Federation realizes this is wrong.
It's
which
great.
We should have.
Yes. Yeah, it should have been a if it's going to be Insurrection, it should have been a much bigger thing.
Mm-hmm. It should have pit Starfleet against Starfleet, and it didn't.
No, exactly. Like, and they even make them into, it's robot drone things that we have to shoot because that's sort of more accessible. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. I've just got a list of things about this that wind me up. I mean, that's what half of this is. Like, it's got F. Murray Abraham in it. F. Murray Abraham is a great actor. He does really interesting, deep, dramatic roles. He's Ruafu. But as a villain, he's utterly forgettable.
I have to look up who this is, because I don't know.
He's in Last Action Hero, if you've ever seen Last Action Hero.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay. He's the partner in that, and I say that particularly. F. Murray Abraham won the Oscar for his performance as Salieri in Amadeus.
Okay, haven't seen it yet.
And one of the greatest lines from cinema is in Last Action Hero, when the boy from the real world goes into the film world and says to Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, Jack, whatever his name is, he says, "Don't trust that guy. He killed Mozart." And because he's played by the same actor. That is genius writing. That is really good. Because, yes, he is something of a villain. He is not someone who comes across as very trustworthy for the characters he plays.
All right.
And that's what I always think of him when I see him on film. I'm not sure you would have seen him in anything, I'm afraid.
Well, I have seen Finding Forrester, but I don't remember it well enough to place him in it.
Okay.
I recognize his face now that I've seen it without alien makeup on it, but yeah, not familiar enough with his stuff.
Because you look at his recent stuff where he's done Inside Llewyn Davis and what was the other one I noticed on the list? Grand Budapest Hotel. Big films, but not ones you go to.
Right. Correct.
So, you've got this Oscar-winning, great actor, got the role without an audition, apparently.
Oh, wow.
They were like, oh, yes, we can get someone. And they've been doing this for a few films in a row, of course. We had Malcolm McDowell. Mm-hmm. And we've had, other Christopher Lloyd coming in, Ricardo Montalban. We've had big actors coming in and doing stuff. Mm-hmm. Oh, who was in number 6? Baron Christopher Plummer. Who's in The Sound of Music?
Yes, Christopher Plummer is Captain Von Trapp.
Captain Von Trapp, Klingon Von Trapp,
yes,
whatever you call him.
Yes, Klingon Von Trapp.
And so we have another great, classical actor coming in and not getting to do very much, which is frustrating. Because at the same time, the other person who doesn't get to do very much is Beverly Crusher.
Yeah, no, she does nothing in this.
Gates McFadden is treated so badly by the people behind Star Trek. And it's just frustrating because she's really good. And it's a good character. Mm-hmm. But she gets none of this young stuff thing going on. Have it that her natural hair colour's growing in or something. Something like that.
Yeah, I don't... I do wish, she's the Uhura, I can't say Uhura of this world, right? She's just there to do a quip, a 1 or 2 liner, so we see her face, and that's it.
Yep. Every so often we need a bit of sort of physical or chemical exposition. Mm-hmm. Cut to Gates. Back to the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Geordi didn't have a lot in this one either. All we really got from him was setting it up to turn Data off and then the regeneration of his eyes.
Oh, we all know Geordie turns Data 1. In the fanfic. We know he does.
I am curious if they are going to let the regeneration of his eyes stand or if it was temporary just for this movie. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
To be honest with you, genuinely cannot remember. He also got to do the expelling. Oh God, my vocabulary is terrible tonight. I'm really sorry. The getting rid of the warp core.
Oh, that's right. Ejecting the warp core. He did get to
ejecting
do that.
the warp core and then exploding it, which is him on an office chair with on wheels sliding across the engineering room and just pressing the button.
Yep.
Amazing.
I did enjoy that. I was like, that's funny. I'm not sure I've ever seen that in a Star Trek film, but
no,
it's just slide across the floor in an office chair.
Because can you imagine it when they're in like a battle with the Romulans?
Yeah, the chair's
and
just
they're hit by
flying
something
all
and
over
it's
the
all
place.
shaking around. Yeah. You need stationary chairs screwed into the floor.
Right? Yeah.
And seatbelts.
Yeah. But it was fun to watch him do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a very good dramatic moment because, and I suspect this might have been part of the reason they did it. It is a joke in the Star Trek world, Star Trek fandom of you can't eject the warp core because the warp core ejection is always offline. It's always offline.
Oh.
Anytime it's like, warp core's going to explode, eject the warp core. Warp core ejection system is offline. Oh no, we need to plug in the USB the other way around and it'll work.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. So certainly in this, because on Voyager they actually do it 2 or 3 times. Like there's a whole one with the warp core getting stolen once. Because they have to eject it.
Because I was thinking, I've seen warp cores ejected before. It always weirds me out because then they're stuck limping along and they can't go to warp speed.
Yeah, right.
So how long is it going to take them to get somewhere where they can get a new one?
Go to the nearest. Well, I'd say Screwfix. I can't think of a Radio Shack. Go to the nearest Radio Shack. There you go.
Oh. Yeah, we don't really have those anymore either.
Tool. What's some sort of home DIY type?
I mean, I guess Lowe's or Home Depot.
Home Depot. That's a good one. Go to Home Depot. Pick up a new warp core. Strap it to the top of your truck. Take it back to the Enterprise.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. Do you have other bits to touch on it?
I really don't. I mean, as much as I enjoyed it, this is an utterly forgettable movie. Like, I'm not sure I even have favorite things to talk about. Okay.
Because I can now dive into the first half of the film.
Okay, let's do it.
Which is good. And introduces good characters and good situations. I mean, the everyone spying on the Baku is actually quite creepy. Again, this is the time of the X-Files. The X-Files are one of the biggest shows on TV, and everyone, particularly in the Star Trek world, is trying to replicate that.
Okay.
So there is some of that going on there as well, and abducting people and doing experiments on them, that kind of thing. But I really like the way they show it being done. It is people researching a thing. It's just now it's Starfleet and everyone's a bit evil.
Yeah. I really wish that they had dove more into the idea that when Data malfunctioned, like Geordi says he reverted back to the moral and ethical standards that he was programmed to, which is why he went against Starfleet. But they didn't dig into that idea, and they could have done a lot more with that. Given they've called it Insurrection, and it's supposed to be pitting Starfleet against Starfleet, it was too much of a throwaway line.
Yeah. And so what does that mean? That he wasn't fully obeying his ethical and moral subroutines, allowing him to be there to abduct these people? Or is it just implied that he didn't know they were being abducted? So why did they have Data there?
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't clear why Data was there if he's still a crew member of the Enterprise. That was completely unclear. But it sounded like he thought he was just on a normal Starfleet mission, and so his programming would have allowed him to do that until he malfunctioned, and he reverted back to his base, whatever, because he recognized, we're spying on these people, and they don't even know we're here, which is why the first thing he did was make them visible.
I think, from what you've just said, I've come up with a way to make the film better and make the Insurrection work.
Okay.
If I can pitch it. Okay. And the thing I'm comparing it to is Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. on. Because one of the things that gets them into it in that is that Chekhov has basically been promoted and now has a science position or a better position on the USS Reliant as part of the Genesis project. What if we did something similar to that? And I'm not sure who it would need to be. I'm not sure it could be Riker. So Geordie's the only one that it sort of occurs to. Geordie is now commander, heading up one of the teams on this thing, designing the ship to transport the Baku. Massive engineering projects. They want one of the best engineers in Starfleet to come and do this thing and head it up. And he takes along Data with him. His best friend, someone he knows is going to be good at this thing. And Data, something happens that kicks in the ethical and moral thing. So the Enterprise comes in to help. And Geordie is the one who believes what they're doing is correct.
Oh, wow.
And is arguing for it and saying, this is what this is going to do. And because of my eyes, this is why it's good for Geordie. Because of his eyes, of course. They make that argument in. This is going to make a huge difference to all the people of the Federation. So it's worthwhile us doing this. And people on the Enterprise don't think it's right. And it starts some sort of conflict thing that we see over the course of the next hour. And Data's in the middle because his moral subroutines have kicked in, but he was clearly doing it already. So something happens there. But make it even more personal because they don't explain why Data was there and what was going on.
I think to do that, though, they would have to do a lot more explaining of why anybody in Starfleet would think this is a good thing, right? Because the reasons that he gave were very superficial. Like, they didn't dive into it at all. We focused so much more on Picard being against it and focusing on, our history has shown that relocating people is bad. How many people is it before it's okay, before it's not okay, right? Like, we focus on that. And the only real reason that we got from Starfleet that they wanted to do this was because by moving 600 people, we can help billions of people. But full stop. There's no, what are we going to do with it once we get it, right? There's no... do you have an actual agreement with the Sona for how this power is going to be divvied up? Like, who decides who gets it and how it's used? And is it finite once you take it out of the rings? Like, we didn't talk about any of that stuff.
And that works well, including some of those arguments. Because some of those arguments are a little bit kind of what they do in Civil War, and again, not enough in Civil War. The setup is, we don't want to be under government control, but they never get into because the government could ask us to do something we want to do or stop us doing something we do want to do.
Right.
It would work well with someone saying this stuff to someone like Geordie and having that argument with him and saying, but we need to, you don't know this is going to work and we need to look into it more and try and make it work in a different way. And him saying, but it will work out, but it is important and we can do this and this is why we need to do this. Without necessarily all the picture, because it means both sides don't have the whole picture.
Right.
They're not aware of what this healing property is and how it works, and he's not aware of exactly how they're going to use it.
Right.
But yes, you could also go into detail of it and say, we found a way that we can replicate it into a hypo spray and inject it in someone and it heals them of every eel. Every eel. Eel? Not, it doesn't heal them of every eel. I tried to say ailment and ill, and I end up with heal them of every eel. Heal your eels.
All right.
Use new vapor rub.
Oh, my goodness. It's too late for us to be doing this. Your words are not coming out the way you want them to.
They're not doing as well, are they?
No.
I think just that thing of making it more personal, even if you end up making it's Data who is doing it because he has weighed the thing up. The logic of the situation, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the 600. Something like that.
Right.
And then get into... Insurrection's not necessarily the right term for it, but it still sort of has that Starfleet v Starfleet thing going on.
Yeah.
But, so we were talking about, we quite like the setup for it and the idea for it and the bringing them in. And I do like, did you say it was Donna Murphy?
Yes.
As the love interest?
Yes.
She's really good and the character is really good.
I agree.
I think, certainly when you look back to the Kirk Star Trek stuff... When there's a love interest, it becomes really obvious. Think of Gillian Taylor from Star Trek 4, the whale researcher, and it just becomes so obvious that it's just flirty and they're going to kiss in the end. And, we liked it that they didn't end up together. It wasn't a full romantic interest,
right?
But it still was. This is how Kirk deals with this situation. This had much more of a vibe of equals people who want to spend time together without it being oh, well, how do you do? I'm the captain of the starship. Oh, how do you do? I'm the unmarried woman of a certain age in this village, and now we're thrown in together. Oh, how do you do?
Well, and I like that we didn't get a kiss or anything, right? Like, we got the moments in time where time slowed down, and we knew what they were symbolizing, but we didn't get any of that, like, voyeuristic look that we get with all of Kirk's, right?
Yeah. I really like her in Introduction to the World. I think it's really well done. And even the ending where he's like, I've got 380 days of shore leave, so I'm going to take them. It's like, that's lovely. I don't need to see it.
Right.
I just need to know that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I can't wait for her to come back for, obviously, the next film, but then in the spin-off series to see him happily settle down and that this film had such an impact on his life and career. And
oh, it would be interesting to see if she pops up in Picard, but, she's not. That'd be awesome, though.
God, if they're not using Beverly, they're not going to use character from failed movie, are they?
Fair enough. Yeah, okay. It's fine.
And the really good bit is the setup for the beginning of the movie. Effectively, we have the bit with them spying on the village, and that's all interesting. And then we go to the Enterprise. The Enterprise is on diplomatic mission after diplomatic mission. We've got a little bit of joking at Captain Picard having to learn phrases, growing out of his uniforms as he's growing older. The very short people. Exactly, it's delightful.
Yeah.
It's the best sort of stuff they were doing in late Next Generation about life aboard the Enterprise. It is what they then do with certainly the third of the Kelvin timeline films. This whole sort of, this is what just a day looks like, what life normally looks like. And them talking about all these different things they're having to go and do, and they've got to go and do this mission and why these things are important and so on. And it is really nice to get that sense of this is a world that always continues.
Right.
Things are always just happening. Except for the fact the people they're in this diplomatic mission with got warp last year, and because of the Dominion War, we're trying to get every ally we can. Why do we want an ally who got warp last year? Give me something. Oh, and their planet is rich in dilithium, so we can mine it.
Right. I didn't even think about that at all. I just thought I thought it was an interesting way to reference current events, current, quote current at the time, right? Because Star Trek fans were still watching DS9 at that point, and so to reference what was happening in the TV world in this movie was fine. Like I liked that they did that, and it didn't even occur to me that that's not a great way to do it.
Yeah, like you said with other things, it just needs that one extra line.
Yeah.
They do it again later. I'm not sure if you would notice when they talk about the Sona, the evil people.
The Sona.
And they say, oh, they made lots of the narcotic Ketracel White.
I did catch that.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And it's done so subtly that people who won't pick up on it will be like, oh, narcotic, okay, they're kind of drug dealers, or don't trust them or something.
Yeah.
But in this world, it's like, oh, they were in bed with the Dominion. They possibly are in bed with the Dominion. This is heavy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely set it up for people who are aware of what's happening in Star Trek to immediately know these people are up to no good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. That was nice, too.
So it's a real shame. The film starts, and I was, because in my head this was a disappointing film that I was not sure we should be watching.
Okay.
But, we're completionists here on BCD.
Yes, we are.
We're completing the thing. But watching that first half back, I was like, but this is good. But I'm enjoying this. This is, and that's funny. The stuff with the pimple. Okay, the scene. I hadn't even realised this was one of my favourites, but the scene where they've been back on board and he's got the pimple. So fine, there's the thing of Data whispering going, there's a pimple, sir. Oh, well, you can't even really notice it. And then Riker walks in and he's shaved. And he makes the comment of smooth as an android's bottom. Then you have exposition, update on all, all the stuff that's happening in the plot. Then he looks at Worf and goes, God, Klingons never do anything small, do you? Which is great. And then the scene, exposition, because they appear to be going to Captain Picard's quarters all together. Fine. The scene ends with them all splitting up, but Data wanting to rub Riker's freshly shaved jaw, rubbing it, thinking, and just looking at him with a shake of the head as though like, "No, my ass is smoother, man."
You liked that?
It's great.
Okay.
It's really good because it's all in service of the larger thing. Mm-hmm. That they are going through things they went through in their younger days. And then you have the moment of the captain dancing and it suddenly clicks of like, I haven't done this in 40 years.
Right.
There's a thing going on here. All these different things for people, having experiences from the younger days.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes back to Adij and talks to her and, they go walking and talking through the night and it's lovely and they can't stop talking and being together. It's beautiful.
I did like him with her a lot. Mm. I think she's my favorite love interest of all the ones that I've seen him with.
Yeah, I mean, she's not Bev, but fine.
Okay, that's fair. I wasn't considering Dr. Crusher on that.
But talking on love interests, let's go back to the Will and Deanna conversation.
Okay.
I find it so interesting, as a proper big hardcore Star Trek fan, that they have never done the story of Will and Deanna. It was always just they used to be together and are no longer together. They never did the episode where it all came out, the episode where they got back together but had to deal with it. They never did ramifications of things. They've hinted at it in moments.
Right.
They had the clone of the younger Riker who sees her and has a thing. They have moments where they're abducted together, the moments where she falls for someone or he falls for someone. But it's always that they just have a very close bond. Mm-hmm. They go to each other for advice constantly. Is the big thing, and it's really well done, and it's a great way to show people dealing with relationships in a mature manner in the future. Mm-hmm. That you can be in such a deep relationship with someone, but they never talk about what that relationship was.
Right.
In the books they do. There are multiple Imzadi books about their relationship together and what happened on Beta Z and why he couldn't stay and so on.
Okay.
But we've never had that story. Mm-mm. And I don't think it matters. And so this is then my question for you. Does it matter? Do you feel like you're missing something somewhere? Have you just filled it in over the years?
Because hearing you say it, like my first instinct is, nuh-uh. We've seen them. Nuh-uh. But you're right. Like, we've only ever seen the hints, right? And we've heard about the history. God, but they've been my OTP for so long that...
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Like, for me, those two are the couple of Star Trek.
Okay.
And watching them having settled down in Picard and they have a family that's wonderful. And it's what I always knew would happen. And I don't know if, like, my head has just filled in all of the details. Like, have I made fanfic up in my head and I believe it's canon? Like, that's entirely possible because I feel like we've seen so much of their relationship, but you're right, we didn't actually see it on screen. Mm. I mean, I know we get their wedding.
Great. Yeah.
I guess that's going to be at the beginning of Nemesis, right? Or the end?
Don't know.
Yes, you do.
Who can say?
But yeah, no, I think that I have canonized my own personal fanfic of those two.
Nice. Saint Deanna.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting.
Fascinating, yeah.
So, I mean, I guess what they did is the perfect amount. I don't need anything other than what they gave us because I created the story myself.
And because the story always has been that they had this relationship in their younger days on Beta Z. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the thing is because she calls him Imzadi in the very first Next Gen episode. In her head, she has a bit of narration, which is her sending her thoughts out to him, and we don't know whether he can hear it or not. I've seen it way too often, sorry.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen the early episodes.
Once Picard comes aboard, he introduces them and she walks down the ramp towards Riker and has this whole thought thing of like, do you remember what I taught you on, again in her head voiceover, do you remember what I taught you on Beta Z, Imzadi? Do you remember the love we shared? Something like that. Mm. And then Picard's like, oh, you know each other. Oh, that's good. I'm glad my officers will get along. So it's doing the kind of American series, hinting at big drama relationships.
Right.
They never go there. They're just really close and really good friends. Because Gene Roddenberry did not want conflict amongst officers.
Okay.
Boring. Sorry, Jane. So I like that if we're saying that people are reverting to their younger, or things that are happening to them from their younger days and so on, the fact they have this relationship that's been rekindled is quite a nice way to show it, without it necessarily being, hey, look, young things are happening. Look at these young things, everyone young things. It's a very early sign that's very easy because, like you, everyone wanted them to be together. Yeah. Everyone finally wanted this story to happen.
Right.
So
I just wish that, and maybe this is just my own failing, because I didn't realize until closer to the end of the movie that it was the planet causing those feelings. Because what we had seen from other people, like we see Worf's hair is growing faster. He's got the pimple. The captain is noticing that like his chin is a little firmer and he can dance. Beverly and Deanna are talking about their boobs being firmer. Right. So it's a lot of...
Oh, God.
That was the line from Data that I hated the most in this movie.
Oh, it's awful.
It is.
Let's come back to
it. It is awful.
Finish your thought.
But all of those things are physical, right? And so it didn't occur to me that this emotional connection that they're having, that there's a regenerative property to that as well, right? And so that's why I was confused for part of it. Like, I enjoyed it. I love watching the two of them together. They have amazing chemistry together. It's fantastic.
Right? Yeah.
But I wish that they had set it up just a little bit better so that by the middle of the movie, we understand this is real. They have feelings for each other, but this isn't really out of left field. There's a reason.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
There's plenty you could have cut to have done that.
Yes. Like...
but I do love the bit that Riker says something about, things changing once we leave the planet, and Worf saying your feelings for her are the same as they have always been. Something like that.
Yeah.
Lovely. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's good that it's Worf, because he and Deanna had a relationship in the Next Gen. So...
Yeah.
Yes, I had forgotten that Beverly had anything about being younger, and that she has the line, "Have you noticed our boobs are getting firmer? Not that we care about this in this day and age." Which is fine. Which is vaguely funny in a we shouldn't talk about this sort of thing, and it's embarrassing because there's a man hearing us. That's a stretch.
It was fine and wonderful until they played the joke of Data walking up to Geordi. Was it Geordi or Worf?
Worf.
Yeah, no, I didn't find it funny. I found it just utterly silly and eye-rolly.
Data's not that dumb. I mean, this is something like 10 years since the start of Next Gen, at very minimum. At most, it's like 12, 13 years or something.
He should know what boobs are.
This is like season 1 Data.
Right.
This is him, completely unemotional, not understanding humour, all this kind of thing. But we've now shown he has emotions, he's learned, he's grown, he's all of this sort of thing. He gets lines like lock and load, saddle up. Ugh. And now we're saying he doesn't understand women talking about women's things. In inverted commas.
They went for the cheap joke.
It's awful.
Yeah, it is awful.
Baffling.
Did not like. They did that a couple of times with him, and I honestly can't remember the other ones, but I just remember... I told Joseph, I said, they've gone way too heavy on the humor in this. Like, if you have to try that hard to be funny, you're doing it wrong.
And it's a shame, because I feel like we're always coming back to Data, which might be why I'm looking at Brent Spiner being in that cast list as... I think he might be second listed. It might be that Jonathan Frakes comes just before him, but...
Well, but Jonathan Frakes directed it. It was a Jonathan Frakes film.
Jonathan Frakes film. Yes. So I'm just... no, I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
No. But I think that with just a little bit of changes to the script, I think this could have been a great movie. Like, it didn't need a lot. It just needs a little massage, I think.
Or to set up the theme is different. But they wanted it to be Insurrection. For whatever reason, they were like, oh yeah, let's have this as... And this was the vibe of the time, of course, as well. All the films coming out, like Mission Impossible, were about people inside your own society going against you and having to uncover moles and things. The X-Files was doing a whole thing about the government plotting against its people, and they wanted to do it and they failed to do it.
Yeah.
And it made about $50-60 million over its budget.
Yeah, not great.
Not great. It's not getting anyone going back for a second viewing, that's for damn sure.
Unless we make you for a podcast.
Yeah. So,
all right. Did you have any other favorite moments, or did we kind of go over all of the high points for you?
yeah, no, I think we've covered all the high points. I can't remember any dialogue particularly. I think, like, I remember laughing at that corridor scene being pretty good, but then it's, very shortly after. And the speechifying between the Admiral and Picard is, again, pretty good because they're making arguments in both directions. But, yeah, we've said they're not strong enough, necessarily, to really, make us buy into the insurrection aspect of it.
Right.
And I don't believe that Picard wouldn't think, okay, I'm going to use every resource of the Enterprise to fight them.
Yeah. Well,
it's me resigning my commission and going on a one-man thing.
Well, it's also weird, though, that our only connection to the Council, the Federation Council, is what the Admiral says.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't check. They just believed him. It would have been nice to actually see more than one higher up supporting this if we're really going to fight it. Because otherwise, it just feels like Picard versus Dougherty?
Doctor, yeah.
Is that his name?
Or to have the other people on the team working on it, fighting against it, even if it's not someone we've met before. And it could be someone we've met before, because we've met a lot of people in Starfleet. So bring back one of them who might have dubious morals or, reasons to do it. It doesn't even have to be one of our core cast. Make it Ensign Rowe, and she's helping on the team because it will help the Bajoran people heal from the Dominion conflict and the Cardassians and so just something.
Yeah.
Fine.
All right.
I'm making my point again, aren't I?
You are. Yeah.
The Briar Patch. Why is it called the Briar Patch?
So that Will Riker could make that joke.
What's that?
Or I guess not have it. It wasn't a joke. It was a, I don't know. He was trying to be clever. So there's characters that aren't really popular anymore because they're also very racist characters. But one of them is called Brer Rabbit. And the story that's being referenced is Brer Rabbit is begging this guy. I can't even remember who it is, but somebody's trying to catch him. And so Brer Rabbit over and over again says, please, mister, whatever you do, don't throw me in that briar patch. Don't throw me in that briar patch, just over and over again. And so the guy is like, well, I'm going to do what he doesn't want me to do, and I'm going to throw him in the briar patch. And it turns out that's where he lives. So that's where Brer Rabbit lives. So the entire time it was this reverse psychology thing.
Okay.
And so I think they made it the briar patch just so Will Riker could make the Brer Rabbit joke.
Okay.
Yeah, it's dubious at best.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I guess it's seemingly uninhabitable, but there is a good place. There's a home in the middle of it or something. But it's a very American story.
Clearly. I think I might have conflated it. I'm sure there's like a Peter Rabbit story of him running away through thorns and it rips his clothes off. And maybe that is what I conflated with in my head. But
I'm not as familiar with Peter Rabbit.
No.
And
Will gets to fly the ship with a joystick. Why does he fly the ship with a joystick?
I didn't catch that.
Did you not? Oh,
I know there's the scene where he makes the ensign get up and he does some of the driving himself, but I didn't catch a joystick in that.
Oh, have I conflated the films? Hang on. Oh, it says it was used in Star Trek Beyond. Yes. No. Okay. So Insurrection. Yes. Okay. I suddenly thought, did I make up that I saw it in this film or something? The Enterprise E had a manual steering column that allows them to manually control the helm functions. Commander Riker utilized the column when performing precise maneuvers inside the briar patch to collect Metreon gas with the ship's ram scoops and subsequently release it.
Okay.
And it is like... It's like the one I would have used at the time for playing X-Wing. It's just with a big red button on the top of it. It's just a joystick that comes out of the panel.
Okay. Yeah, I missed it.
Bonkers, absolutely.
All right, so there is one more film in the Star Trek franchise. With the original, before we get to the Kelvin timeline, how about that?
Yes.
Before the reboot, there is one more Star Trek film.
Star Trek Nemesis.
With a young Tom Hardy. That's all I remember.
And Ron Perlman.
Ooh, Ron Perlman's in it. Interesting. I know I saw it. I watched it. I had not seen Star Trek in so long, but when it came out, it was TNG, so I wanted to see it.
Right.
I don't think I was prepared for it or kind of understood anything about the TNG world before I went into it.
Okay.
And it's been so long. I only saw it the one time. I have no idea what happens in it. I know it is universally panned as the worst of the Star Trek films. And I know that Tom Hardy character is a clone of Picard.
Right.
That's all I know.
Okay.
Oh, and Data
can't remember
dies.
any plot details.
I know that Data dies because that's a huge plot point for Picard. So,
Yes, basically. Yeah.
but I don't know how or why. Like, I have no idea what
Okay.
the conflict is. I don't remember why somebody was trying to clone Picard. Nothing.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to watch it.
Right. Good. 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 Good.
If you keep saying it, you will eventually believe it.
Oh, crikey. Yeah, that did not make very much money at all by comparison to even the worst performing Star Trek films.
Yeah. And that one was in the early 2000s, right? It's like
2002.
2002, yeah. Okay, interesting. All right.
I mean, Star Trek was not popular at that time anyway. Not a time when the world was particularly looking for optimistic visions of the future.
That is a fair assessment.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll come back to that at some point and get that one covered.
We will.
Okay, so but how come you didn't see the other next gen films?
I don't know.
Okay, is this a thing that you wouldn't have been allowed to see?
No,
You've
my
been able to see
parents
Next
watched,
Gen?
my parents watched Star Trek. I'm not sure I was as aware of them early, particularly since, I would have been very, very young. Like, I watched most of Star Trek in syndication, not on its first
Right,
run.
of
Because
course.
it did
Yeah,
start
okay.
in the late 80s when I was like 5, right?
Okay.
So I would have watched most of it in syndication, and so I probably wasn't as aware of the movies as they came out. They would have all been things I would have seen later. And then in 2002, I'm practically an adult,
Practically.
a 20-year-old in college, probably actually 19. But, I would have seen TNG. Ooh, I like Star Trek. I'm going to go watch that, right? That's where that would have come from.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Cool. Yeah, good to know. It never occurred to me that you would have seen one of them but not the rest. And I think we've discussed it, but just why that difference?
I for sure had never seen this one.
Right.
Like, for sure. The Borg one I had, or at least I had seen bits and pieces of it, because when I think of the Borg, I think of that Borg queen. And as I said in that movie, I didn't realize she was from the movie. I thought she was from the show.
Well, and she does come back for the show as well. So
Okay.
you would have seen her on Voyager and doing stuff there.
Okay.
Okay. You might remember we asked people to tell us a couple of weeks ago about Cockney rhyming slang.
Oh, did we get
After we
responses?
talked on Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yes.
At Susie Hula, Susan Holt talked about how her first exposure was Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins. And I haven't looked it up. I can't remember specifically what he uses, but I can absolutely see it, his sort of take on the Cockney accent. All right, Governor, let's go and hey, Mary, up your windpipe, whatever.
Okay.
But we had a really good one from Jan at JLMO. I can't remember my first exposure, but I didn't really get it until someone explained to me that giving someone a raspberry was rhyming slang. So when you blow a raspberry?
Yes. Yes.
Just in case you weren't sure. It's called a raspberry.
It is called a raspberry.
And the slang is a raspberry tart for a fart. Yeah? So that's why it's called a raspberry.
But what?
Because tart rhymes with fart. And so you say raspberry tart, because presumably they sold raspberry tarts a lot in the East End of London.
All right. So that's why.
So when you make a noise like you are passing wind with your tongue between your lips, then you call it a raspberry.
Wow. I did not know that. Like, I am being
Yeah, it's a good
educated
one.
here live on the podcast.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. And I have noticed them in a couple of places, just people using it as part of normal language.
See, I don't even think I would know because, in that instance, it's been shortened to just raspberry, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would just assume that's just what it's called, and I would have no idea where it came from.
And I think it normally does get shortened eventually, but you start off with Ruby Murray for curry, and then eventually you just call it a Ruby, for instance. And I think I talked about, a Scooby-Doo for Clue, and then you say, I haven't got a Scooby. And so it's sort of 2 steps removed from. Love it.
Interesting.
I also meant to talk to you. I'd completely forgotten, just if we're reading out messages. When we've talked Star Trek, and I have made reference to my friend Chris, just really tangentially. Chris is pretty much my oldest friend. We first met because I used to have to stay late after school, because my dad worked at the school. And I was sat in the computer lab one day, and I saw this guy writing some code that would draw Spock's face on a computer screen.
Ooh.
And I started talking to him because he was a dude who liked Star Trek, and that's my friend Chris.
Okay.
We met age 11, something like that, and, we have grown up going to pretty much every Star Trek movie that has come out since. Chances are we saw Insurrection together, for instance.
Okay.
You have talked about loving the Next Gen theme. And that when the Next Gen theme comes on, it's a big deal for you. And I was listening out for it in this one, and I was really fascinated listening to it because I could hear it was different. It was the same theme, but musically different. It was orchestrated in a different way. And I am not musically educated enough to understand why. So I sent him links to it. I'm like, right, I'm watching this now, and it's different. I need you to help me understand. Explain as you would to a child. How is this thing different?
Okay.
And he actually came back with 3 very good points I completely liked. One is about the recording. The way they've recorded is different, so there's a more distant sound to the film, which makes it sound more epic and so on. There is significantly more percussion. The Next Gen theme has almost none, but in this there's tartans, gongs, snare rolls, and tuned blocks. He says it's much more like the motion picture original version, and that's really interesting because I was listening to it going, this is the cinematic version of it, and I think it's that makes it sound cinematic because that's the one that they use in the films. But particularly because I said to him, I think it's the brass. I think there's something the brass is doing, which might be quieter, which might be louder, which might be different instruments. It might be something's happening with the brass that is different. Okay. And he said, right, the brass is raspier. It's being played louder, and they're emphasising the swells more. Sforzando, apparently, which is much more common in modern cinema. Things like Dark Knight, but was popularised by Wagner. Just for full disclosure, Chris is a lecturer in music at university.
Right.
This is why he was the one to go to. And it is really interesting because, what they were doing, when it gets into the ba 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 ba, and the brass starts coming in and doing really big notes towards the end of it, it starts much softer but really goes for the crescendo. Really big. It's like, yes, that's exactly what they're doing. With that language, yes, I can understand that they are, checks notes, emphasising the swells more.
Yeah, I just equated it with being bigger because it's on a bigger screen, right? Everything in movies is just bigger and richer. And so that's why I assumed it was different, because it was still very recognizable, and it still had the triangle dings to start with. But I'm glad you asked for clarification to kind of get those points out, because those are great, interesting.
Because it was just, there's times when the music does something different than you expect it to. I'm like, well, it's different. I don't know why it's different, but I know it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Good. I completely forgot to mention that earlier on.
Okay.
Right. What's next?
We are doing what we just figured this out. Why don't I remember? A Lifeless Ordinary?
A Lifeless Ordinary.
All right. A movie I had never heard of.
We are changing gears into a rom-com? I'm not sure.
The movie poster absolutely makes it look like a rom-com. I don't know what it's about, but I've seen the cover with Ewan McGregor and Cameron Diaz, and it just makes me think it's a rom-com. But something tells me it's not, because you suggested it. It's like there's a twist or like a darkness or something. I just don't know what yet.
Right. I own this one.
You own it.
I own it. I own it. To tell you how old this is, it's one of those crystal DVD cases.
Oh, wow.
That's the proper, nice plastic molded around everything. Yeah, it's an old DVD.
So you like this movie?
I do like this movie.
Okay.
Haven't seen it in a very long time, which is one of the reasons why I suggested it, because I saw it on my DVD shelf. I'm like, well, I must like it. I have no idea how it holds up.
Okay.
Let's check it out.
All right.
But also knowing, your sort of film, so
We'll see.
could be an interesting one. Right.
What would we like to hear from people?
I don't know. Something to do with Star Trek. Tell us what we should... So we've just watched a disappointing Star Trek film. And I'm afraid I'm going to set up the expectations for Nemesis. We're going to watch another disappointing Star Trek film. In our enjoyment of Star Trek, because Star Trek is great and we love Star Trek, what should we go and watch to cleanse the palate from Insurrection? And then when we watch Nemesis, to cleanse the palate from Nemesis, what Star Trek should we go and watch? Is it a film? Is it an episode? Is it some video online? We're a bit too far off Christmas to go and watch the Simply Having a Wonderful Deep Space Nine. Or Make It So, Make It So, Make It So. But YouTube videos are always welcome as well. What Star Trek thing do people think is like, that is a good Star Trek thing that will make you like Star Trek again?
All right.
That's what people should suggest.
Speaking of Star Trek, have you watched any of the Below Decks?
The Below Decks?
Isn't that Lower Decks? Lower Decks.
Lower Decks.
Below, lower, whatever. I haven't watched any yet, but I've seen a lot of people talking about it.
I haven't seen anyone talking about it because I've muted it.
Oh,
and I'm being very public here that I've muted it. I don't want to know anything. It's Star Trek.
Okay, so you will watch it eventually.
Once it's out over here, of course I'll watch it. Absolutely, I will jump on it.
Oh, it's not out for you guys.
No.
Okay.
No, and I'm not very impressed. In the same way, the short treks are not out for us. We can't get them.
Really? They're all on Amazon Prime for me.
Oh, well...
I sat down and watched them all before season 2 started of Discovery. It was fantastic.
Is everyone about to go like, oh, Matthew, watch Lower Decks. It's great. It's the best palate cleanser.
No, but I was just thinking about it, because it's a new thing, and I haven't watched any of it yet, so...
No, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to... Is it Prodigy? What's the new... They're doing an actual kids show. Not just animated, but an actual kids Star Trek.
I didn't know that.
Star Trek Prodigy or something. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to Discovery Season 3 coming back.
All right. Awesome. Well, if you would like to tell us which Star Trek we should watch to get Insurrection out of our mouths, please tell us. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Eloquent Gushing, or you can send an email to podcast@eloquentgushing.com. I'm Mandy Kay, and you can find me on Twitter when I'm not watching mediocre Star Trek movies at Mandy Kay.
And I'm Matthew Vose. You can find me tweeting at Matthew Vose. I'm not tweeting at Matthew Vose. My Twitter handle is at Matthew Vose. I said that the wrong way. It's very late. Pop Culture Deprived is 100% funded by lovely listeners through Patreon. We give access to exclusive content, bonus shows, early access to things. We take your money and turn it into amazing podcasts like this that you love very much. And you want to help support us. And you can find out more to help support us by going to patreon.com/eloquentgushing.
And we will be back next week with another episode where we are going to talk about possible rom-com, A Life Less Ordinary. Until then, I'm Mandy Kay.
And I don't know how they do it on Deep Space Nine, but on the Enterprise, we still report for duty on time. Pop Culturally Deprived is an Eloquent Gushing production. For more information, visit eloquentgushing.com or find us on Twitter at eloquentgushing.